Hello everyone, and welcome back to TechBlock. Today we are doing a laptop review, the first of hopefully many laptop reviews to come in the near future, but this is the first one we're doing. Don't you dare fall asleep on me. This is the Acer Predator Triton 500. It's a very nice laptop. So far I've had it for around like 2-3 weeks or so. It's been awesome. I've never had a high-end laptop before. This is the first time me ever experiencing like a high-end gaming laptop, I suppose. But this is really more than just like a gaming laptop. Like, I could see myself using this as like a daily driver instead of like a stationary desktop PC. Like, it's genuinely a really good laptop. The screen on here is 144 Hz, IPS, 3 millisecond response time. It's wonderful. It's only a 1080p screen. I kind of wish it was like a 2560 by 1440p screen, as personally I'd really appreciate having a high resolution screen as I could fit more things on my screen when video editing. But when it comes to gaming, 1920 by 1080p is more than fine on a 15.6-inch display. And speaking of gaming, you can run just about any game you want on this laptop. It's rocking an RTX 2060, an i7 8750H CPU, 6 cores, 12 threads. It's wonderful. And the one game I've pretty much only played on this laptop is Battlefield 5, and let me tell you, it runs absolutely fine. Now, in my main rig, I used to have an RTX 2060 in there, and I used to play Battlefield 5 on a 3440 by 1440p ultra-wide display at 100 Hz. And that RTX 2060 handled it absolutely fine, pretty much like a max settings on Battlefield 5, which is all good. So when it comes to this laptop running Battlefield 5 on a much lower resolution screen, it runs absolutely fine. You can crank the settings up to max, the game will look good, it'll be smooth. When it comes to productivity, I'm talking like Adobe Premiere, Lightroom, Photoshop, stuff like that. This laptop is really impressive. Adobe Premiere in particular, I've never seen perform so well. Like, my PC over here has a Ryzen 7 2700X CPU and an RX 64, 32 gigabytes of RAM. Like, it's a pretty high-end PC. And funnily enough, I would much rather export and edit my video on this laptop instead of my main PC over there. Like, that's how good the performance is on this laptop, especially for Adobe Premiere. Like, because of hardware encoding, I can export videos so much faster on this laptop than I can on my main rig. It's just crazy, man. A few other things I should probably mention. This laptop has a very nice keyboard. I didn't really think I'd like it as much, as I am used to like mechanical switches on a Razer keyboard. The one I personally use at the moment is a Black Widow Elite with the Razer green switches. But this keyboard on this laptop, I really like. Apart from one thing, the key layout is a little bit different from your typical Razer keyboard, so that kind of throws me off every now and again. So overall, this keyboard is lovely to type on, and they've even kind of added like some custom keycaps for a few of the keys. So for the WASD keys, the arrow keys, as well as the Predator Sense button over here, they've ended up using like some light blue custom keycaps for these keys in particular. So they kind of stand out, as this is kind of like, a gaming laptop, so they've added, like some custom keycaps for all the gaming keys, I suppose. There's also a lovely turbo button above the F1 and F2 key that only works when the laptop is plugged in via power. But when you press that button, it overclocks your graphics card and pretty much sets every single fan in here to like max speed. And that's when this laptop gets pretty darn loud. But the only times I'd actually use this button is when exporting a video. I'd press export on Adobe Premiere, I'd hit the turbo button, that would overclock the graphics card for me, set the fans to max speed. At that point, I would just leave the room, as it's pretty darn loud. I'd let it export the video, and yeah, I'd come back, it's all done. Whether or not you would actually want to use the turbo button in the same room as the laptop is questionable. Unless you're wearing a headset when playing games, I probably would not press the turbo button, as the fans get pretty darn loud. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is also a Predator Sense button just below the power button right there in the top right corner. And this opens up the Predator Sense app, which can show you your CPU temp, your GPU temp, your overall system temp. You can adjust lighting for your keyboard. Now, there are 3 lighting zones for this keyboard. Can I show you by pressing on static? Yeah, so there's zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. Very simple. You can't really do any crazy custom lighting effects on this keyboard like you would on, let's say, like a Razer Blade laptop, but at least you do get some kind of customizability when it comes to lighting on your keyboard. When it comes to overclocking, yes, you can overclock this laptop. However, it's currently telling me overclocking is only available when AC adapter is plugged in and at least 40% battery life remains. At the moment, we have 9% battery life, and it's not plugged in. But there are already some presets that you can choose from. So we're currently on normal, but you can press on fast, extreme, and that'll pretty much just overclock your GPU core clock for you. Then there's also fan control for your CPU, your GPU fan 1, and then your GPU fan 2. Mine's currently on auto. I've never really messed around with this too much, as the fan speed normally is absolutely fine. Like the laptop itself is pretty silent, like you can't really hear a thing. But when you press on max, I'm not sure if this microphone will pick it up. But oh my lord, is this thing loud. But if you put on a pair of headphones, that hopefully won't bother you too much. We have an entire monitoring tab on Predator Sense as well for your CPU, GPU, and overall system performance here. So, you know, you have your RAM frequency, your Ethernet, your Wi-Fi, all that good stuff. You have Game Sync, which I've never used, and there's also an App Center. But one thing you should probably know is that there is a settings button right here that when you press it, you can enable the LCD overdrive, which will overclock your display and set it to a whopping 3 millisecond overdrive response time, which will just lower the response time of your display, which is always a good thing. As for the specs of this laptop right here, we're looking at an Intel Core i7-8750H CPU, 6 cores, 12 threads, 2.2 GHz base with a 4.1 GHz boost clock. We have a NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060 here, as well as the Intel UHD Graphics 630. We have 16 GB of DDR4 RAM running at 2666 MHz. One of the best features about this laptop is probably the display. We have a 15.6-inch 1080p 144Hz 3 millisecond response time display on here, which looks absolutely amazing. It's an IPS display running at 144 Hz. The only thing I wish that was slightly better about this display was the display brightness. It's absolutely fine in like slightly darker environments, you know, at night and stuff. But during the day, if you are outside or in a very, very well-lit environment, you'll tend to wish that the display was quite a bit brighter. As for storage, we have a 0.5 terabyte NVMe PCIe SSD in here, which let me tell you, is fast as hell. Here's the performance results on Crystal Disk Mark. Like, that's really good. As for connectivity, you have Bluetooth 5.0, killer double shot pro, Ethernet/Wi-Fi. So we have a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port over on the left-hand side of the laptop, as well as killer wireless AC 1550i 802.11ac Wi-Fi. Even though this is a gaming laptop, it does have a 1 megapixel 720p HD webcam on here, which in my opinion actually doesn't look too bad. I can't really compare it to anything else on the market, as this is my first laptop review. But going forward, I will be able to compare this laptop's webcam to other webcams out there on the market on other laptops. But this one in particular, I think looks very good for a 1 megapixel camera. However, the microphone that you're currently hearing is the built-in microphone in this laptop. And that microphone, as you can probably hear, isn't amazing, but I wouldn't say it's terrible either. On the left-hand side of the laptop, we have the AC port right here, the 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, one USB 3.1 port, HDMI 2.0, headphone microphone jacks. Over on the right-hand side of the laptop, you have a Kensington lock, a massive heatsink, two more USB 3.1 ports, mini display port 1.4, as well as Thunderbolt 3/Type-C. Okay, so I've pretty much covered all the good things that I like about the laptop. Now let's talk about the cons. The cons of this laptop, what's bad about it, what didn't I like so much? One of them being the design of the screen and the build quality of the screen. Now, the display is amazing, don't get me wrong, but the screen flex is a bit worrying. Now, I don't know if this is normal across like all gaming laptops or all laptops in general, where this amount of screen flex is just normal, but in my opinion, I wish the screen had a bit more rigidity to it, I suppose. Oh, and I'm sure you've probably noticed already, but there is a very thick bottom bezel beneath this display. The top and side bezels are super thin, it looks beautiful, but they've kind of sacrificed that for a very thick bottom bezel there. Personally, I didn't really mind having this thick bottom bezel there, but other people might not be too big of a fan of that. One more thing I forgot to mention, the chassis of the laptop, especially the back of it, is an absolute fingerprint magnet. Like, I'm sure you can see this on camera. It's bad. It's really bad. I don't know what they can do about this, but just thought that's something I'd mention. As for the speakers on this laptop, they're not bad. However, I guess the main problem with them is that they're just not very loud at all. Like, it's loud enough, I suppose, if you're like in a small room by yourself or you're playing like Battlefield or something. However, my main complaint with them is that I just really wish they were a lot louder. The battery life on this laptop isn't amazing either, especially if you're playing games when you're not plugged in. Yeah, don't expect this thing to last very long. And like, you could maybe get away with like a full day's use out of it if you don't do anything intensive like video editing or playing games. If you just stick to like, you know, simple tasks and simple programs that don't really require a lot of horsepower, then you might be okay. But to be honest, if you're going anywhere with this laptop, make sure you bring the AC power adapter with you, because the battery life on this thing, really isn't that great. One feature I wish this laptop would have had is an SD card reader. That would have been just so cool. But this is more of a gaming laptop, so I understand why they didn't include an SD card reader in this machine. But personally, something that I would have really liked to seen. Right, so that pretty much concludes my review of the Acer Predator Triton 500 laptop right here. In my opinion, this is like the sweet spot, as there are 4 different models of this laptop available. There's a slightly cheaper version which goes for around £1,350, but you downgrade to an Intel Core i5 CPU and to 8 gigs of RAM. The model that we have here today costs between £1,600 and £1,800, depending on where you buy it from and whether or not it's on sale. However, there are also 2 other versions available with an RTX 2070 and an RTX 2080, but the RTX 2070 and 2080 models are very expensive. Personally, I'd say this is kind of like the sweet spot. Like, I don't really think you need an RTX 2070 or a 2080 in this kind of form factor. Like an RTX 2060 on a 1080p screen, 144Hz, unless you're planning on playing very graphically intensive games, I'd probably recommend you stick to the RTX 2060 model here. I feel like for £1,600, this is kind of like the sweet spot in terms of like price to performance. The performance of this laptop really did surprise me. I did not think it would be this good. Like, I would much rather edit videos on this laptop than my main PC, because it's so good, man. Overall though, would I recommend this laptop? Absolutely, especially if you can pick it up for around £1,600 on Amazon. Like, that's an awesome deal. For this kind of performance, this kind of display, like this is a really good laptop. Apart from that though, thanks for watching. Hope to see you in another video soon. Goodbye.